The new nanny signed to a deaf boy. Without knowing, the millionaire mother was watching everything. Olivia Parker signed another temporary work contract while steadying the nervousness tightening her chest. At 28, she had already worked in dozens of homes as a nanny, but no family had ever given up on her as quickly as she needed money to survive. That's when she met little Ethan Miller, just 8 years old, the son of Jennifer and Richard Miller, one of the wealthiest families in New York City. The boy, deaf since birth, had made 15 nannies quit in less than 2 years. Olivia lied during the interview, claiming she had no experience with special needs children, knowing it might cost her the job. The truth was quite different. She had grown up caring for Ryan, her younger brother, who was also deaf. "You'll see he's a difficult child," said Jennifer on the first day, watching Olivia with tired eyes. "He doesn't connect with anyone. The doctors say it's normal, but I'll do my best," replied Olivia, keeping her knowledge to herself. Jennifer left for her social engagements, leaving Olivia alone with Ethan. The boy was sitting on the floor of the luxurious living room, playing alone with some toy cars, completely unaware of the new nanny's presence. Olivia watched him for a few minutes, her heart tightening as she remembered Ryan. Hesitantly, she approached and knelt beside the boy. Ethan looked up, preparing for yet another frustrating attempt at communication he knew all too well. But Olivia, with gentle and natural movements, began to speak in sign language. "Hi, Ethan. My name is Olivia," she said, her fingers dancing fluidly in the air. The boy's eyes widened. For the first time in months, someone was speaking directly to him, in his language, without forcing words he couldn't hear. You really know how to talk to me," signed Ethan, still in disbelief. "Of course I do," replied Olivia, smiling. "Want to play?" What Olivia didn't notice was that Jennifer had forgotten her purse and returned to get it. Standing at the slightly open door to the living room, the mother watched the scene with tears in her eyes. It had been so long since she had seen her son interacting naturally with someone. It had been so long since she had seen him smile. Jennifer stepped back quietly, her heart racing. Olivia was doing something she herself hadn't been able to do in years. She was reaching Ethan in a way that seemed almost magical. But there was also something deeper happening there, something that stirred old wounds within Jennifer herself. "Do you have siblings?" asked Ethan through signs, already more at ease. Olivia hesitated for a moment. "I had a brother. He was like you." "Had?" Ethan caught the change in Olivia's expression. He went away," said Olivia, choosing her words carefully. "But he taught me a lot about being brave." During the following week, Olivia devoted herself completely to Ethan. They played, studied, and for the first time in a long while, the Miller home echoed with silent laughter. Ethan began to express himself more, showing his sweet and intelligent personality that had been hidden for so long. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now, continuing. Jennifer watched everything from afar, pretending not to notice her son's transformation. During meals, she saw Ethan trying to tell her about his day using basic gestures she pretended not to understand. At night, she heard Olivia singing lullabies through signs, gentle movements that lulled Ethan to sleep peacefully. One afternoon, while Olivia was helping Ethan with his homework, he suddenly stopped and looked directly at her. "Olivia, can I tell you a secret?" signaled the boy, looking around to make sure they were alone. "Of course, Ethan, you can trust me. My mother also knows how to speak in signs," revealed the boy. "I've seen her making the same movements as you, but only when she thinks no one is watching." Olivia felt the floor disappear from under her feet. "What do you mean?" "Sometimes, when she thinks I'm sleeping, she comes into my room and talks to me through signs. She apologizes for something, but I never understood why. The other day when you weren't here, I tried to make signs with her in the kitchen, but she got very scared and ran away." Olivia's heart raced. If Jennifer knew sign language, why did she pretend not to? Why did she leave her own son isolated when she could communicate with him? That night, Olivia decided to test her suspicion. During dinner, when Jennifer was serving dessert, Olivia discreetly signaled to Ethan, "Your mother looks very beautiful today." Ethan responded in signs. "She always looks beautiful when she's happy." Olivia watched Jennifer closely, who continued serving the pudding as if nothing was happening. But Olivia noticed the woman's hand trembled slightly when Ethan made the sign for happy. "Jennifer," said Olivia carefully, "Ethan was telling me today that he really likes to draw. Perhaps you could spend more time doing creative activities with him." I don't know how to communicate with him," replied Jennifer quickly without looking at her son. "That's why I need you here." But Olivia had observed something crucial. When Ethan signaled draw, Jennifer instinctively began to form the same sign with her free hand, stopping only when she realized what she was doing. 2 days later, the situation became even more complicated when Richard Miller arrived from a business trip. Tall and imposing, he hugged Ethan briefly before addressing Olivia directly. "How is he behaving?" asked Richard, speaking about his son as if he weren't present. "Ethan is a very intelligent and affectionate child," replied Olivia. "He just needed someone who understood the way he communicates." "Understood?" Richard raised an eyebrow. "You know sign language?" Olivia hesitated, remembering she had lied in the interview. "I learned some basic things to be able to help Ethan better." "Interesting," said Richard, and Olivia couldn't tell if he was approving or suspicious. "Jennifer told me that you two are achieving results that no other nanny has managed." During dinner, Olivia observed the family dynamics. Richard spoke to Ethan using basic gestures and lip reading, clearly making an effort. Jennifer remained practically silent, serving the food and avoiding any form of direct communication with her son. "Daddy," signaled Ethan for Olivia to translate. "He wants to know if you will be home tomorrow to play with him." Olivia translated the message, and Richard smiled stiffly. "Tell him I might have time after my meetings." But what caught Olivia's attention was Jennifer's reaction. The woman had perfectly understood what Ethan had signaled, and her expression revealed deep sadness at her husband's response. The next morning, Olivia arrived early and found the house silent. She went upstairs to get Ethan and found him in his parents' room, talking in signs with Jennifer. The scene left her frozen. Mother and son were having a fluent and natural conversation in sign language. Olivia quickly stepped back, but not before hearing Jennifer saying through signs, "Mommy loves you very much, my son. Mommy just doesn't know how to show it the right way." Ethan responded, "Why don't you talk to me like this when other people are watching?" "It's complicated, sweetheart. Daddy thinks that—" Jennifer stopped signing when she heard footsteps in the hallway. Olivia came down the stairs quickly, pretending she had just arrived. A few minutes later, Jennifer appeared in the kitchen with Ethan, both acting as if nothing had happened. "Good morning, Olivia," said Jennifer, avoiding eye contact. "Good morning," replied Olivia, noticing that Ethan seemed confused by his mother's sudden change in behavior. Throughout that week, Olivia felt as if she were living in two different realities. During the day, she was the only person who communicated properly with Ethan. But there were moments when she caught Jennifer watching them from afar, and she could swear she saw tears in the woman's eyes. One afternoon, while helping Ethan organize his toys, the boy stopped and looked directly at Olivia. "Olivia, do you think my mother doesn't like me?" he signed, with a sadness that broke Olivia's heart. "Why do you ask that, Ethan?" "Because she never really talks to me. Not even when I know she can. She pretends not to understand when I sign, but I know she does. Sometimes I see her crying when she thinks no one is looking." Olivia knelt in front of the boy, holding his small hands. "Ethan, your mother loves you very much. Sometimes adults do strange things because they're scared or confused, but that doesn't mean they don't love us." "Scared of what?" That question echoed in Olivia's head for the rest of the day. What would make a mother afraid to communicate with her own son? What had happened that made Jennifer hide something that could bring so much happiness to Ethan? The answer began to reveal itself the following week when Mrs. Eleanor, Ethan's paternal grandmother, came to visit. The grey-haired woman with a gentle gaze hugged her grandson affectionately and immediately began talking to him using basic gestures. "How's my little grandson doing?" asked Mrs. Eleanor, speaking slowly so Ethan could read her lips. Ethan looked at Olivia, who translated the question into signs. The boy responded excitedly about his recent activities. "It's good that you finally found a nanny who understands Ethan," said Mrs. Eleanor to Jennifer. "I remember when you learned sign language right after we found out he was deaf. You were so dedicated, took courses, bought books." Jennifer turned pale. "Mother, please." "What?" Mrs. Eleanor seemed confused. "You were so determined to communicate with Ethan. I remember you practicing signs for hours, saying you'd do everything so he'd never feel isolated. What happened to—" "Mother, this isn't the time to talk about that," Jennifer interrupted sharply, throwing a nervous glance at Olivia. But Mrs. Eleanor continued, unaware of the tension in the air. "Richard should see how naturally you used to communicate with Ethan before. It was so beautiful to watch. I don't understand why you stopped." "Mother!" Jennifer practically shouted, making everyone in the room fall silent. Olivia watched the scene with growing understanding. There was something Jennifer was desperately trying to hide, something related to her having stopped using sign language with Ethan. That night, after everyone had gone to sleep, Olivia went upstairs to check on Ethan. She found him awake, looking out the window. "What's wrong, Ethan? Can't sleep?" "Olivia," signed the boy, "I heard my grandmother talking about my mother knowing signs. Does that mean she was lying to me all along?" Olivia sat on the bed beside him. "Not exactly lying, Ethan. Sometimes adults make choices they think are best even when they're not." "But why would she stop talking to me if she knows how?" That question had haunted Olivia all afternoon. "I don't know, Ethan, but I'll try to find out, okay?" The next day, Olivia decided to confront Jennifer directly. She waited until Richard left for work, and Ethan was busy with his drawings. "Jennifer, I need to talk to you," said Olivia, finding the woman in the kitchen. "About what?" Jennifer couldn't hide the nervousness in her voice. "About Ethan, and about sign language." Jennifer's face paled. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Jennifer, I know you understand signs. I saw you reacting when Ethan signs. I noticed you starting to form signs without realizing it. And yesterday your mother-in-law confirmed that you learned sign language when Ethan was little." Jennifer sat down heavily in a chair, covering her face with her hands. "You don't understand. It's not that simple." "Then explain it to me," said Olivia gently. "Ethan is suffering because he thinks his own mother doesn't want to communicate with him. He needs to understand why." I can't," murmured Jennifer. "Richard can't know that I still remember." "Why not?" Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like the video and especially to subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. Jennifer was silent for several minutes, her hands trembling slightly. Finally, she began to speak. "When Ethan was diagnosed, I was determined to do everything right. I learned sign language, read all the books about childhood deafness, connected with other mothers going through the same situation. Ethan and I had a beautiful connection. We talked about everything. He told me his dreams through signs. We laughed together." "What changed?" asked Olivia softly. "Richard," said Jennifer, and her voice carried years of hurt. "He always had trouble accepting Ethan's condition. For him, deafness was a problem that needed to be fixed, not a part of who Ethan was. He started pushing for Ethan to have surgeries, intensive therapies, anything that could restore his hearing, and the signs. Richard said that if Ethan saw he could communicate perfectly through signs, he would never try to develop other forms of communication. He brought in specialists who agreed with him, saying I was encouraging the disability instead of seeking a cure." Olivia felt a wave of anger rise in her chest. "But Ethan doesn't need to be cured. He's a perfect child, just as he is." "I know that," exclaimed Jennifer, tears finally streaming down her face. "But Richard threatened to take Ethan away from me if I kept hindering his development. He has money, influence, lawyers. I couldn't risk losing my son." "So you stopped using signs." "It was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life," sobbed Jennifer, "seeing my son trying to communicate with me and having to pretend I didn't understand. Seeing the confusion in his eyes when I stopped responding in his language. But I was so afraid of losing him that I thought I was doing the right thing." Olivia moved closer and put her hand on Jennifer's shoulder. And now? How do you feel seeing Ethan finally having someone to talk to? Relieved, admitted Jennifer. And jealous, and guilty. Ethan is flourishing with you in a way he never could with me, even when I used signs. You have a connection that I lost when I started lying to him. It's not too late, said Olivia. Ethan still loves you. He's just confused about why you don't talk to him. Richard will never allow it, said Jennifer, shaking her head. He's already suspicious about how you're managing to communicate so well with Ethan. If he finds out you know sign language fluently, he'll fire you. And if he finds out I still remember everything, what would he do? He would carry out his threat. He would take Ethan away from me. Olivia felt her heart break. The situation was much more complicated than she had imagined. Jennifer, have you ever thought that maybe Richard has changed? That seeing Ethan happy, he might reconsider? You don't know my husband, said Jennifer bitterly. Richard is a man who doesn't admit he's wrong. If he finds out that Ethan is thriving specifically because of sign language, that would mean admitting he was wrong all these years. And Richard Miller never admits he's wrong. That night, Olivia barely managed to sleep. The conversation with Jennifer had revealed a much more painful situation than she had imagined. A mother forced to disconnect from her own son out of fear, a father blinded by his own prejudices, and an innocent child paying the price for all of it. The next day, Olivia watched Jennifer with new eyes. She now saw the suffering behind every moment the woman pulled away when Ethan tried to communicate. She saw the held-back tears when Ethan ran excitedly to tell something to Olivia instead of to his mother. She saw the pain of a woman who had sacrificed the connection with her son to avoid losing him completely. Ethan, in turn, seemed to sense the tension in the air. Olivia, my mom has been acting strange, he signed that afternoon. She keeps looking at me with a sad face, but when I try to talk to her, she pretends not to see. Maybe she's going through a tough time, Olivia replied diplomatically. Do you think it's because of me? Because I'm deaf? Olivia's heart shattered. Ethan, listen carefully to what I'm going to tell you. You being deaf is not a problem. You are not a burden to anyone. You are a smart, caring, and perfect child exactly as you are. Then why does my dad always talk about fixing me? Why does he schedule so many doctor appointments to try to make me hear? Olivia realized she was treading on dangerous ground, but she couldn't let Ethan carry that guilt. Ethan, some adults think different means broken, but they are wrong. You are not broken. Your way of communicating is beautiful and perfect. 2 days later, the situation took an unexpected turn when Richard came home early and found Olivia and Ethan playing in the living room. He watched for a few minutes without being noticed, seeing how his son interacted naturally and effortlessly with the nanny. Ethan seems very happy with you, commented Richard when Olivia noticed him at the door. He is a wonderful child, replied Olivia. Very smart and expressive. Expressive? Richard raised an eyebrow. How so? Olivia realized she had said too much. Well, through the gestures you use with him, I can sense his personality. Gestures, repeated Richard thoughtfully. Olivia, can I be direct with you? Of course. Ethan has changed a lot since you arrived. He's more communicative, happier, more present. How are you achieving this? Olivia felt cold sweat trickle down her back. I just try to give him my full attention when we're together. Is that all? Richard watched her intensely. Because I hired experts in deaf communication, behavioral therapists, specialized educators. None of them achieved what you have in just a few weeks. Maybe Ethan just needed someone who treated him like a normal child, said Olivia carefully. Normal, Richard repeated the word, as if it were strange. Do you think Ethan is normal? I think Ethan is perfect. Richard fell silent for a long moment. Olivia, I need to ask you a direct question, and I want you to be honest with me. Do you know sign language? Olivia's heart stopped. If she lied and Richard found out later, she would be fired and Ethan would lose another important person. If she told the truth, Richard might do exactly what Jennifer feared. I learned a few things, she finally said. A few things, or are you fluent? Insisted Richard. Olivia took a deep breath. I am fluent. Richard's expression hardened. You lied in the interview. Yes. Why? Because I needed the job, and I thought you wouldn't hire me if you knew. And you were right, Richard said coldly. We don't hire nannies who know sign language. Why? The question came out before Olivia could stop herself. Because we don't want Ethan to get too comfortable with his condition, explained Richard. He needs to make an effort to communicate in other ways, to integrate into the real world. If he has easy access to sign language, he'll never develop properly. Olivia felt a wave of indignation. Mr. Miller, with all due respect, Ethan is already communicating with the real world. Sign language is a complete and natural language. It's not an obstacle to his development, it's a tool. You don't understand, Richard said firmly. We are planning surgery for Ethan that could restore some of his hearing. After that, with intensive therapy, he can live a normal life, but if he gets too used to signs— And if the surgery doesn't work? Interrupted Olivia. What if Ethan doesn't want the surgery? Ethan is a child. He has no choice in this matter. At that moment, Olivia realized that both Ethan and Jennifer had appeared in the doorway to the living room. Ethan had seen the whole conversation, and by the expression on his face, he had lip-read at least part of what was said. Daddy, Ethan said loudly, something he rarely did, I don't want surgery. Richard turned, surprised. Ethan, how long have you been there? Long enough, Ethan replied, still using his voice. I don't want my ear fixed. I like being the way I am. Ethan, you don't understand, began Richard, moving toward his son. The surgery will help you to— I don't need help, interrupted Ethan, and now he used signs, looking directly at Olivia to translate. Tell him I'm happy being deaf. Tell him I don't want to change. Olivia looked between father and son, feeling caught in an emotional storm. He says he's happy the way he is and doesn't want the surgery. Richard's face turned red. This is exactly what I was talking about. You're influencing my son with these ideas. You're making him think being deaf is good. Being deaf isn't bad, Olivia said firmly. Ethan is an intelligent, caring, and capable child. His deafness doesn't define or limit him. You're fired, Richard said abruptly. I want you out of my house now. Richard! Jennifer's voice echoed through the room, making everyone turn. Stop this! Jennifer, stay out of this. This woman is destroying years of progress with Ethan. What progress? Jennifer stepped into the middle of the room, her hands shaking with nerves. Ethan was isolated, sad, closing himself off more and more. Since Olivia arrived, he's been happy, communicative, confident. How is that destruction? Because she's using sign language with him, exploded Richard. She's teaching our son to accept his disability instead of overcoming it. And what's wrong with that? Jennifer's voice rose, years of hurt finally coming to the surface. Ethan doesn't have a disability. He has deafness. That's part of who he is. Richard looked at his wife as if he didn't recognize her. What are you talking about? Jennifer took a deep breath, and Olivia saw the woman making one of the bravest decisions of her life. I know sign language too, Jennifer said, her voice firm for the first time in years. I learned it when Ethan was a baby. We've been communicating in signs for years, until you made me stop. The silence in the room was deafening. Richard turned pale. Ethan's eyes widened in shock, and Olivia felt as if she were watching a dam break. You remember? Signed Ethan to his mother, tears beginning to stream down his face. I never forgot, replied Jennifer in signs, her own tears falling. I never stopped remembering every conversation we had, every story I told you, every time you told me you loved me through those tiny hands. Ethan ran to his mother, who wrapped him in a tight embrace. For the first time in years, mother and son communicated freely, their hands dancing in conversations that Olivia could see were intimate and deep. How could you hide this from me? Asked Richard, his voice low and dangerous. How could you pretend all these years? How could I? Jennifer turned to her husband, still holding Ethan. You threatened me, said that if I kept encouraging Ethan's disability, you'd find a way to take him from me. I was trying to protect our son. From what? Shouted Jennifer. From communicating, from being happy, from having his own identity. From living a limited life, Richard shouted back. Ethan can have a normal life if he tries hard enough. He doesn't need to be stuck in this world of gestures and silence. His world isn't silent, said Olivia softly, making everyone turn to her. Ethan's world is full of communication, expression, and life. You just weren't seeing it. Richard turned to Olivia angrily. You have no right to speak about my family. She has every right, said a new voice from the doorway. Everyone turned to see Mrs. Eleanor standing at the entrance, her face stern, because she's the only person in this house who has treated my grandson with dignity. Mother, this isn't your business, began Richard. It is my business when my grandson is suffering, interrupted Mrs. Eleanor. Richard, I watched you turn a happy child into a sad and isolated one. I watched you force my daughter-in-law to lie to her own son, and now I'm seeing the damage it has caused. I was doing what was best for Ethan. No, you were doing what was best for your own ego, said Mrs. Eleanor firmly. You never accepted that your son is deaf because it reflected something about yourself that you didn't want to face. Richard turned pale. What are you talking about? Mrs. Eleanor took a deep breath before answering. Richard, your father was deaf. The silence in the room was total. Olivia saw the shock on Richard's face, the surprise on Jennifer's, and the confusion on Ethan's. That isn't true, murmured Richard. It is true, said Mrs. Eleanor sadly. Your father gradually lost his hearing during childhood, but back then there weren't resources like today. He learned to compensate so well that many people never knew, but he was always afraid his children might inherit his condition. Why did you never tell me? Richard sat down heavily on the sofa. Because your father was ashamed, and because when Ethan was born deaf we saw you repeating the same pattern of denial your father had, explained Mrs. Eleanor. Your father spent his whole life trying to hide who he was. You're doing the same thing to Ethan. Olivia watched Richard processing this information, seeing years of beliefs being questioned in his mind. Grandpa was like me, signed Ethan to Jennifer to translate. Jennifer translated the question, and Mrs. Eleanor answered her grandson directly. Yes, Ethan, your grandfather was exactly like you, and he was a wonderful, intelligent, and successful man, just like you can be. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like the video and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us as we're just getting started. Now, continuing. Richard remained silent for several minutes, clearly wrestling with this new reality. Finally, he looked at Ethan, who stood beside Jennifer watching his father with curiosity and caution. Ethan, Richard said slowly, do you really not want the surgery? Ethan looked at Olivia, then at Jennifer, and finally at his father. Using his voice, he responded, No, Daddy, I like who I am. But don't you want to hear music? Hear our voices? Ethan thought for a moment before answering, this time using signs that Jennifer translated. He says he already hears you, not with his ears but with his heart. And that music for him is the expressions on your faces when you're happy. Richard's eyes filled with tears for the first time Olivia had ever seen. My son, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for trying to change you when you were already perfect. Ethan ran to his father and hugged him tightly. Richard wrapped his arms around him, and Olivia could see that finally the man was truly seeing his son for the first time. Jennifer, said Richard, looking at his wife, can you forgive me for making you choose between me and your maternal instinct? Jennifer approached and touched her husband's face. Richard, I never stopped loving you. I just stopped trusting myself. Olivia, Richard turned to her. Can you stay? Ethan needs you, and I need to learn sign language too. Olivia smiled, feeling a wave of relief. Of course, I'd love to teach. In the weeks that followed, the Miller household underwent a complete transformation. Richard enrolled in intensive sign language classes and spent afternoons practicing with Ethan. Jennifer returned to communicating freely with her son, recovering years of lost conversations. Olivia watched the family reconnecting, but also wrestled with her own memories. Seeing Ethan happy and accepted made her painfully remember Ryan, her brother who hadn't been as fortunate. One afternoon, while Ethan was drawing in the living room, he stopped and looked at Olivia. "Olivia, you said you had a brother like me. Where is he now?" Olivia felt the familiar tightness in her chest. He's in a place where he no longer needs to worry about being different." Did he leave because people didn't understand him? Ethan's perceptiveness always surprised her. "In a way, yes." "Do you miss him?" "Every day," admitted Olivia. Ethan stood up and approached her. "Did you take good care of me because you remembered your brother?" "No," said Olivia honestly. "I took good care of you because you deserve to be taken care of well. Every child does. Thank you for helping me show my parents who I really am." Olivia hugged the boy, feeling that somehow she was healing not just the Miller family, but also her own wounds. 2 months later, Olivia received an unexpected proposal. Jennifer entered the kitchen where she was preparing Ethan's snack. "Olivia, Richard and I have been talking about something." "What is it?" "We want to establish a support center for families with deaf children, a place where parents can learn sign language, where children can interact with other deaf children, where families can receive emotional support." Olivia was impressed. "That's a wonderful idea. We want you to coordinate the project." Olivia nearly dropped the glass she was holding. "Me? But I don't have the qualifications for that." "You have something much more important," said Jennifer. "You have heart and real experience. And the ability to help other families like you helped ours." That evening, Olivia talked with Ethan about the proposal. "If you accept, does that mean you won't be my nanny anymore?" asked Ethan. "It means I'll be something even more important," replied Olivia. "I'll be your friend forever. And I will help other children like you find families who understand them. How would Ryan have liked to know a family like this?" Olivia smiled through her tears. "I think he would have loved it." 6 months later, the Ethan Miller Center for Deaf Families opened in New York City. It was a bright, welcoming space where parents learned sign language, children played and communicated freely, and families found support and community. On opening day, Olivia was nervous. There were dozens of families present, journalists and local officials. Ethan, now 9 years old and much more confident, had insisted on giving a speech. "Before Ethan speaks," said Richard into the microphone, "I would like to publicly apologize to my son. For years, I tried to change him because I didn't understand that the problem wasn't with him, it was with me. Ethan didn't need to be fixed. I was the one who needed to learn to see him." Jennifer approached the microphone. "This center exists because a brave young nanny taught us that true love means accepting our children exactly as they are, not as we wish they were." Then it was Ethan's turn. He climbed onto the small stage they had set up, and Olivia stood beside him to translate. "My name is Ethan Miller," he began in signs, as Olivia translated. "I have been deaf since I was born. For a long time I thought that made me different in a bad way. I thought I disappointed my parents because I couldn't hear." Olivia continued translating, as tears silently streamed down her face. "But Olivia taught me that being deaf doesn't mean I can't communicate. It means I communicate in a special way. My mother learned to talk to me with her hands when I was a baby, and now my father is learning too." Ethan stopped and looked directly at Olivia. "Olivia had a brother like me, named Ryan. He wasn't lucky enough to have a family who understood him. But Olivia promises she will help other children like me, and like Ryan, to never feel alone." The audience was completely silent, many with tears in their eyes. "This center is for all deaf children and their families," Ethan continued, "so no child has to feel like they are broken, so no mother has to choose between loving her child and making her husband happy, and so no father has to be afraid to accept who his child really is." When Ethan finished, the audience erupted in applause, but Olivia noticed that many of the deaf parents present were applauding in a special way, raising their hands in the air and waving them, which is how deaf people applaud. After the ceremony, when the crowd had dispersed, Olivia found Richard sitting alone in the center's garden. "How are you feeling?" she asked. "Proud," said Richard, "and ashamed. Proud of my son, who is much braver and wiser than I ever was, and ashamed for wasting so much time trying to change him. "What matters is that you changed," said Olivia. "Ethan sees that. He is very proud of you too." "Olivia," Richard looked at her seriously, "you saved my family. How can I thank you?" "You've already thanked me," Olivia replied. "You gave me the chance to honor my brother's memory by helping other families. You gave me the chance to turn my pain into purpose." That night, Olivia returned to her small apartment and looked at the photo of Ryan she kept on her nightstand. It was a picture of him smiling, signing to the camera. "Ryan," she said aloud, knowing that even though he couldn't hear, somehow he knew. "We did it. Other children won't go through what you went through. Other families will learn what our family never learned." She touched the photo gently. "I love you, bro. And I will keep fighting so all children like you are seen, understood, and loved exactly as they are." 1 year later, the center had served over 100 families. Olivia had become a recognized advocate for deaf rights, speaking at conferences and training other professionals. Ethan, now 10 years old, had become a sort of mentor for younger children arriving at the center. He helped them feel welcome and showed that being deaf could be a source of pride, not shame. Jennifer and Richard had become ambassadors for the center, sharing their story with other families and showing it's never too late to change how we see our children. One special afternoon, Olivia was at the center when a new family arrived, a young mother with a 5-year-old girl who had just been diagnosed as deaf. "I don't know what to do," said the mother, clearly in despair. "The doctors say she'll need surgery, intensive therapies, a lifetime of treatments. I just wanted her to be normal." Olivia knelt in front of the girl, who was hiding behind her mother. "Hi, sweetheart," said Olivia in sign. "What's your name?" The girl timidly responded, using some basic signs she had learned. "This is a special place," Olivia continued. "Here, children like you are celebrated exactly as they are." The mother watched the interaction in surprise. You think my daughter doesn't need to be fixed?" "Your daughter isn't broken," Olivia replied gently. "She just communicates in a different and wonderful way. Let me introduce you to Ethan. He'll show your daughter how amazing it is to be exactly who she is." Ethan appeared as if magically summoned. He knelt before the girl and began conversing with her in signs, making her smile for the first time since arriving. "See?" Olivia told the mother. "Your daughter doesn't need to change. The world needs to learn her language." Olivia watched another family beginning their journey of acceptance and love, and knew she was exactly where she belonged. Every child she helped, every family she guided, was a way to honor Ryan and ensure his story had meaning. The center grew and expanded, becoming a model for other cities. Olivia wrote a book about her experience, which became essential reading for families of deaf children. But to her, the greatest success was always seeing the smile on each child's face when they discovered they didn't need to change to be loved. At 15, Ethan became a youth activist, speaking at schools about diversity and acceptance. He often ended his presentations by saying, "I'm not deaf, I'm Ethan, who happens to be deaf. And that's just one of the many amazing things about who I am." Jennifer returned to school and became a therapist specializing in family support for parents of deaf children. Richard transformed his company, implementing inclusion policies that set an example for other corporations. And Olivia found her true calling, being the voice that defends every child's right to be accepted and loved exactly as they are. She never married or had children of her own, but was mother to hundreds of children who passed through the center, all of whom called her Aunt Olivia in sign. One Sunday afternoon, 10 years after that first day at the Miller home, Olivia was in the center's garden when Ethan, now an 18-year-old young man about to enter college, approached. "Olivia," he signed, "I want you to know something." "What is it, Ethan?" "You didn't just teach me to be proud of who I am. You taught my entire family what unconditional love means." "You all taught me so much too," Olivia replied. "I'm going to study special education at university," said Ethan. "I want to work here with you when I graduate." "It would be an honor to have you as a colleague," said Olivia, hugging the young man she had watched grow up. "Olivia," Ethan stepped back to look her in the eyes, "do you think Ryan would be proud of what we built here?" Olivia looked around the center, children playing freely, parents learning signs, families talking and laughing together. A sign at the entrance read, Ryan and Ethan Miller Center, where every child is perfect, just the way they are. I know he would, replied Olivia, because we finally managed to create the world he deserved to have. That night, Olivia returned home and looked once more at the picture of Ryan. But this time, she didn't just feel longing. She felt gratitude. Gratitude for having had a brother who taught her about unconditional love. Gratitude for having found the Miller family who taught her about courage. And gratitude for having discovered that life's greatest tragedies can turn into life's greatest purposes. Thank you, Ryan, she said to the picture, for teaching me that true love means accepting someone exactly as they are, for showing me that being different can be a gift, and for giving me the strength to make sure other children never feel alone the way you felt. Olivia put the picture away in the drawer, not because she wanted to forget Ryan, but because she knew he now lived in every child she helped, in every family that found peace, in every moment of acceptance and love she witnessed at the center. The young Ethan, who once felt isolated and misunderstood, had become a symbol that every child deserves to be seen, heard, even in silence, and loved exactly as they are. And Olivia, the nanny who lied in an interview to get a job, had found her true mission in life, to make sure a family's love never depended on a child changing who they are, but rather on the family learning to love the child as they already are. End of story. And you, dear listener, what did you think of this story of acceptance and family love? Do you know any family that has gone through similar challenges? Leave your opinion in the comments. We love to hear about your experiences. Don't forget to leave your like if the story touched your heart, and most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other moving narratives we've prepared for you.